Hi, welcome everybody. My name's Stephanie Davis, and thank you for being here. Tonight we've got a short wine tasting. So we're going to do a presentation tonight on the grape called Chenin Blanc. And a couple of things I just want to go over. You've got 3 glasses in front of you, so we've got 3 different styles of Chenin Blanc. We also have a handout for you here, and the handout lists the learning objectives that we're going to cover. And it also has the names of each of the 3 wines so that you can take some notes or reference it at another time. So the map that you also see in front of you is specific to the Loire region of France. And that's kind of where we're going to focus this whole topic on, because Chenin Blanc, even though it is grown worldwide, really has its homeland in France, and specifically in the Loire. So just real quickly, let's go over the learning objectives. First of all, by the end of the presentation, you should be able to discuss some of the typical attributes that the grape Chenin Blanc has. So what are their characteristics of the grape? Number 2 is what are the typical wine regions of the world, the most famous of Chenin Blanc. So where it's grown and what regions you think of. And then the last thing is just covering some of the vocabulary and terms. Some of them are just local, regional terms, but so when you see it on a wine label, you have a better understanding of what that means. So first of all, let's go over the Chenin Blanc, the grape. And it is a white wine, a white grape varietal, and it is really has kind of a high acid profile. So, which is really nice because it allows for the wine to be made into different styles of wines, and especially like the sparkling styles. It also has like high vigor in the vineyard, so it's easy to grow, and is used a lot even just for bulk wine production because it's so easy to cultivate. And then the other thing about the grape is that it can ripen to high sugar levels and then create wines that have higher alcohol. So it's a very versatile grape, has a fruit components, so like stone fruits and citrus flavors and aromas. And then sometimes it tends to have, depending on the wine, it can have kind of like a cheese or kind of a yeast flavor. So just depending on how the wine's made, it's an interesting grape, that's for sure. So the next thing I want to talk about is where it's grown, right? So I know we've already kind of mentioned that the Loire Valley of France, but the other places that Chenin Blanc is grown is South Africa. And in California, it's mostly grown for the inexpensive bulk wine production. So you don't see a lot of producers in California taking it very seriously. So there's only a few that really make a high-end Chenin Blanc. The grape is also grown in South America, but it's rarely seen there, so it's not really worth talking so much about. So France, specifically in the Loire Valley, is really where the wine is a special thing and has a history there. And then what's kind of fun are some of the little terminology, different sort of nicknames for the grape. So in South Africa, like I mentioned, they call it steen, so that's S-T-E-E-N. And so if you ever see that on a wine label or in a description, that is referring to the grape Chenin Blanc. And then in France, they call Chenin Blanc Pinot, and that's spelled Pineau. So you might see it as Pinot de la Loire, or they might say, just a reference to Pinot the grape, and might attach a village name or an appellation name or something like that. The other terminology that's worth mentioning is, because we're going to be tasting sparkling, dry, and sweet styles. In France, they also have terms for that too. So the sparkling style is pétillant, and the dry style is sec, and semi-sweet is demi-sec, and then really sweet, like a dessert style, is called moulu. So there's different ways that you would see it on the label. So very quickly, let's go over each wine, and starting with the sparkling, so that is on your left. The sparkling wine is a sparkling Vouvray. Vouvray is an appellation, so a very specific designated area within the Loire, and in a sub-region of the Loire area called Touraine. So that's on the very bottom left-hand corner of your wine map. This is beautifully sparkling, dry style, made in the same way as champagne. What do you guys think of it? It's nice and crisp. Makes a nice aperitif for the holidays, maybe an alternative to champagne. But refreshing, and has some complexity. Some nice citrus notes, and yeah, any thoughts?
As a comparative to champagne, like how much does this cost, and is it easy to find?
That's a good question. So it's roughly around like $23, $25, so really good price point compared to champagne, even though it's made in the same style, although a different grape, right? Because champagne isn't made with Chenin Blanc. So some differences, but also the same way. Not too hard to find, in a nice size liquor store with a good selection. They should have a sparkling Vouvray. Let's move on to the next wine. So we've got a dry style still wine called Sauvignon. So again, Sauvignon is the appellation. Then the sub-region is the Anjou-Saumur region. So you'll see that kind of on the middle right-hand side of your maps. And this is a really beautiful wine that not very many people are familiar with. It is also dry, a little bit higher in alcohol than the other two. Also has some golden apple notes, lemon peel. It's definitely food friendly. So this is, less of just a sipping wine, but more of a great food pairing wine. Fish, salads, shrimp, crustaceans, that kind of a thing. But yeah, very beautiful. Little bit harder to find. So referring back to the question earlier, harder to find, can be kind of expensive. This one is actually really affordable in that $25 range, but quite often is much more, twice that sometimes. This is a 2008, which also reflects how nicely these wines age. All of these Chenin Blancs, vintage Chenin Blancs, usually age really nicely from the Loire Valley. Any questions about wine number 2?
I'm sorry, can you repeat some of the foods that we would pair with this?
Yeah. So Sauvignon goes really nicely with white, like flaky fish, so mild fish that have kind of maybe a citrus sauce or a lemon-based kind of accent, fresh herbs, light salads, something that's also light, because the wine itself, even though it can be kind of austere, it's got very nice subtleties to it, so you don't want an overpowering dish. All right, let's move on to wine number 3, and that is our sweeter style of Chenin Blanc. Also an older vintage, 2005, so almost 10 years old. This is a really neat wine, and reminds me of one of my French friends who, this is his favorite wine, and his mom always brings it back from France for him. But it's called Côte du Lion, and this little appellation is also in the Anjou, Saumur area of the Loire, just like the Sauvigniers is, except for it's right on the edge of the, it's right on the Lyon River. This wine, I think, has some really nice nectarine and apricot notes. Also kind of that honeyed character. So if any of you have had Sauterne before, it has some similarities to that. It also is often, Chenin Blanc is often referred to as like France's answer to Germany's Riesling, because of the high acid profile that Chenin Blanc has, and that's similar to Riesling, but also some of the fruit characteristics, and then the versatility that the grape has to make exquisite dessert wines. So, you know, there's a lot of times that those wines, like in blind tastings or something, can be mixed up, you know, so some sommeliers are like, can't tell if it's a Riesling or if it's a Chenin Blanc. So that's just because some of the similarity there. But as far as like the holidays coming up, you know, you might think that, you know, this style of wine might be nice with your desserts as an alternative. And again, we're still right around that $20 to $25 price point. So something interesting to share with your family and friends without, you know, breaking the bank. So that's nice. What I also really liked about this one was that I kind of feel like it's good acid balance still with the sweetness, and I felt like it sort of wraps around your tongue, like when you have a real, it's like the finish has really good body and stuff. So I just think this is a really nice example. There are many others, but this one I thought was a nice one. So, does anybody have any questions about the sweet style, or in particular the Côte du Lion?
Yeah, how long can you age this wine?
You know, this wine can be aged for a couple decades. So right now we're right around 10. But you know, Sauvignier and Côte du Lion, they have ageability of 20 years, sometimes more. So as long as it's in the right conditions, and you know, we always want to kind of take in consideration your producer and your vintage. But typically, you know, these producers take this pretty seriously, and the style and the grape can keep up with all of that time in bottle. So good question. Yeah. And it's hard to find, you know, wines this old just in the liquor store, but I lucked out. So that's cool. All right, so in conclusion, I just want to make sure we go over all of the learning objectives, and so I didn't miss anything. So we covered a couple of the characteristics that make Chenin Blanc unique, and that it's got a high acidity profile and high vigor in the vineyard, and nice body, including the alcohol level that it can achieve. Also, that there's some similarities that to other grapes that you can compare it to, you know, or describe it to somebody else being similar to Riesling, or like a dessert style Sauterne or something. Second of all, we covered that there's plenty of wine regions that can grow Chenin Blanc, but the major ones really are France, South Africa, and California. And then the last thing is, you know, a couple of nicknames and some terminology that might be unique to this grape. So Steen is one of the other names for it, and Pinot is the French one. So those should help when you're identifying that wine at a liquor store or on the menu at a restaurant. So, is there any other questions?
Yeah, how do the Chenin Blancs from South Africa and California differ from these ones from France?
Good question. So, France has a little bit of a different climate, so it's cooler climate. The grape has higher acid levels when it's picked in France, so it makes for higher quality sparkling wines. And even the dessert wines having a better acid level is important in the balance of a sweet wine. So California and South Africa, often the climate can be a little bit warmer, and the grape loses some of its acidity, ends up ripening a little bit more in all of the sunshine, so it ends up higher alcohol, more fruit, less acid. So it's just it's a different style wine. Not that they can't do a great job, but it's not taken care of quite the same, and the climate's just different enough. So, are there any last questions? I think the wines were great.
I think they're good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, guys, and happy holidays.
Thank you too.
Thanks.